Hello and welcome to the walkthrough of the Homeostasis negative feedback loop study table. There is a link below in the description if you would like to download this document. So first of all, we're going to go through the stimulus response model again. The stimulus is a change in the environment that disrupts homeostasis. A receptor is a modified dendrite that detects the stimulus. The modulator decides upon the appropriate response and sends messages to the effectors. There are two types of messages. There's neural, which is nerves, and endocrine, which is hormones. The effector brings about the response, and the mechanism is how it does it. And the response is the overall action required. When the response opposes the original stimulus, we call it negative feedback. And this is how homeostasis works. So we're going to start with a high temperature stimulus. In fact, it's high blood temperature that matters. The receptor is a thermoreceptor in the hypothalamus, and the modulator is also the hypothalamus. It sends out a neural message to sweat glands, blood vessels, and erector pili. The sweat glands produce sweat, the blood vessels vasodilate, which means they move closer to the surface of the skin, and the erector pili relax, making the hairs lie flat on the skin. The water from the sweat uses the heat from the blood to change phase from a liquid to a gas, taking the heat with it, and pilo-relaxation allows the air to come in and remove the water vapor. The hypothalamus also tells the thyroid gland to release less thyroxine, and less thyroxine tells the cells to use less cellular respiration and therefore generate less heat. And therefore the overall response is a lower blood temperature. And the response directly opposes the original stimulus and its negative feedback. Next is if you've got a low blood temperature. So the stimulus is low blood temperature. The receptor is a thermoreceptor in the hypothalamus. The modulator is the hypothalamus. It sends neural messages to skeletal muscle, blood vessels, and erector pili. The skeletal muscle contracts at 20 hertz or 20 times a second, and we call this shivering. The muscle fibers rub against each other and generate heat. The blood vessels vasoconstrict, which means the blood vessels move away from the surface of the skin, and so no extra heat can be lost. The erector pili contract, causing piloerection or goosebumps, which traps air close to the skin, forming a layer of insulation. The modulator also tells the thyroid gland to release more thyroxine. More thyroxine tells the cells of the body to undergo more cellular respiration and generate more heat. And so the response is a higher blood temperature, which directly opposes the original stimulus, and this is negative feedback. Next, we've got glucose homeostasis. So if we eat a meal, we've got a high blood glucose concentration. It's detected by a chemoreceptor in the pancreas. The modulator is the beta cells in the pancreas, and the beta cells release insulin. The insulin tells the cells, the liver, and the adipose tissue, which is fat, to take in glucose from the blood. The cells use the glucose for cellular respiration. The liver turns the glucose into glycogen, and we call this glycogenesis. And once the liver has 400 grams of glycogen in it, the adipose tissue takes up excess glucose and turns it into fat, which we call lipogenesis. And so the response is a lower blood glucose concentration, which directly opposes the original stimulus, and so this is negative feedback. But what if you're fasting? The stimulus is low blood glucose. The receptor is a chemoreceptor in the pancreas. The modulator is the alpha cells in the pancreas, and the alpha cells release the hormone glucagon. Glucagon tells the liver and the adipose tissue to release more glucose back into the blood. So the liver undergoes glycogenolysis, which is the breaking down of glycogen into glucose. The liver undergoes gluconeogenesis, that turns protein into sugar. And the adipose tissue undergoes lipolysis, which turns fat back into sugar. And therefore the response is a higher blood glucose concentration, which directly opposes the original stimulus, and therefore it's negative feedback. Next, we've got water homeostasis or osmoregulation. If you're dehydrated, you've got a low amount of water in the blood. The receptor is an osmoreceptor in the hypothalamus. The modulator is the hypothalamus. The modulator tells the posterior pituitary to release antidiuretic hormone, and antidiuretic hormone works on the nephron, in particular the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. and both these places reabsorb more water out of the filtrate. The neural response is the initiation of the thirst reflex that makes the person want to drink water. So the overall response is an increase in the water concentration of the blood, which directly opposes the original stimulus, and therefore this is negative feedback. But what if you're one of these people that drinks a lot of water every day? You become overhydrated. So the stimulus is a high blood water concentration. It's detected by an osmoreceptor in the hypothalamus. The modulator is the hypothalamus, and it tells the posterior pituitary to stop making ADH. So the nephron, in particular the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, are told to stop reabsorbing water from the filtrate. The neural message is to stop the thirst reflex, and therefore you don't feel like drinking. So the overall response is a decrease in the amount of water in the blood. And this directly opposes the original stimulus, and so this is an example of negative feedback. Thank you for paying attention. I hope you've learned something. Don't forget to like and subscribe, perhaps even tell a friend, and I'll catch you later. Goodbye.